And here we go. It's another Penguins live chat. I am Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms. That's YouTube and Facebook today. Do me a favor before we get rolling. Like, subscribe on the YouTube side, and give the page a like on the Facebook side. So I've got a few topics lined up, and I'm going to kind of use those as sort of the roadmaps. I know where you're going today, so I'll let you get there. Don't worry. Let me make sure we sound okay. Okay, yep. At least the sound is coming through to the laptop just fine. The Penguins last night, that last little glimmer, that little speck of hope was in fact extinguished. And what other franchise would do that to the Penguins but the New York Islanders? If there is any team, it's not the Philadelphia Flyers, certainly not the Washington Capitals. If there is one franchise, one organization that has provided the Penguins nightmares, the worst moments in Penguins history seemingly have all come against the New York Islanders. So that was a little bit fitting last night. The Islanders score 4 unanswered goals. The Penguins just take a dirt nap in the third period. So, it surprises me a little bit. I see the Vladislav Kolyachonok kerfuffle exploding on X. Obviously, Kris Letang and Erik Karlsson are getting plenty of shrapnel for their performances on Tuesday. And Mike Sullivan, just by extension, is kind of, it's all going to roll down to him one way or the other. So we'll get into all of that. But I think I'll take your pointed questions rather than me expounding on some of those. Because first, I am going to tackle the Kolyachonok sort of issue exploding on Twitter. First of all, I don't think, or at least I can't fathom, anybody being in love with Kolyachonok's play to the point that they're angry he gets benched. If you are, I might suggest seeking professional help. Having said that, yes, Kris Letang was involved in just an ugly sort of goal. The puck hits the stanchion, bounces to the center of the ice when he was playing it to come to the wall. He dives. Islanders have a 2-on-0 10 seconds into the third period, and you just feel the hockey gods sort of tapping the Penguins on the shoulder. The clock struck midnight, and you could just feel their 4-game win streak blowing in the breeze. It was over. Even though they led 2-1, you just sort of knew it was about to be a terrible third period. So let's get into the Kolyachonok, Letang, Karlsson, Sullivan kerfuffle. Yes, Kolyachonok was put to the bench Tuesday night. He didn't play a whole lot, and that has some fans angry. Here's what I believe is the current situation. It's not so much about Kolyachonok as it is about Mike Sullivan. By benching Kolyachonok, it's proof that somehow another young player, is being screwed over, denied his chance at the hands of the rank jerk Mike Sullivan, who only wants to play 30 and 35-year-olds. Try as I might, I haven't been able to puncture that lunatic narrative. I've tried. Because Sullivan will default to players he trusts, like every other coach. But let's get to the Kolyachonok stuff specifically. And he hasn't played well. I don't understand this gathering around him that he was going to be, a future or a staple of the Penguins' blue line even next season. The obvious problems with his game are the gaps that he plays with. Very loose gaps. That creates very soft play. It doesn't create turnovers. It doesn't make it hard to play against. The other teams are able to control the puck and control territory against him on his side of the ice. He really For as much criticism as Sullivan levels against P.O. Joseph for sort of the same thing, understand Kolyachonok just extrapolates by a multiple factor on Joseph's sometimes soft gaps and soft play. Sullivan very much understood that third period was for all the marbles. And he was playing to win. He's not playing for 25, 26 in that third period. He's playing for the third period. And so he looks at Letang's mistake. Although, to be honest, I don't think it was a mistake. Having talked to Letang, got his side of the story, watched the replay a couple more times, they fit. His story and the replay fit together. That, in fact, the puck should have stayed along the yellow, along the wall. He's going that direction, hits that metal piece, bounces that way. That's one of those hockey god goals. I can't fault Letang for that one. There were other things. There were turnovers last night, and there were kind of some awkward defensive coverages. There was Erik Karlsson stepping up at the offensive blue line to try to break up the Islanders' breakout and rush, and just gets run over. Roadkill. Goes down to one knee. The puck goes straight past him. There go the Islanders on a 3-on-2, which essentially became another semi-breakaway. What are you going to do? The reason that, say, Letang or Karlsson get a much longer leash than Kolyachonok, hear me now, believe me later, it's because they do so many other things. They have the potential to do so many other good things for you. At any point in that third period last night, Kris Letang or Erik Karlsson could have made the play, the big play to wrest control away from the Islanders and win the game. That's why you keep them on the ice. That's why coaches are so reticent to bench a star player. It's because they're a star for a reason. They do a lot of good things. Kolyachonok doesn't do a lot of good things. And so when he's having an exceedingly rough game, which Tuesday certainly was for him, and you're playing for keeps in that third period, it makes sense. If you're in last place, if you're the San Jose Sharks, where this season almost doesn't matter, you probably have a different reaction. But the Penguins last night weren't in the future mode. They were in the now mode. So, that's the best way I can explain it. A guy who does a lot and makes a mistake is not equivalent to a guy who makes a mistake. But I can't seem to drive that point home, either of those points. That's why coaches don't bench star players, and that's why Letang is not equivalent to Kolyachonok. So, that's that. I am going to kind of dive in. I actually have to go to the dealership / garage and pick up my motorcycle. I had some new tires put on it. When you can start to see the metal, it's probably time to replace the tires on a motorcycle, lest I be hanging from a tree somewhere by my foot, half unconscious. But they had Mark Madden on yesterday. I'm not going to put words in Madden's mouth. Mark is plenty capable, but he was kind of really diving into the Sullivan aspect and issue. Obviously, Mark, again, not putting words in his mouth. I think if Mark had the choice, I don't think Sullivan would be the coach next season. In Mark's reasoning, and I'm going to dive in. I actually have it on my notes here. He was in the right church. I'm going to kind of go into that a little bit, as well as the Penguins' biggest problems. There really are two. One is unsolvable, and one is sort of solvable. All right, so let me get to the questions here, and then I'm going to veer back to Sullivan and the problems. I also know you guys want to talk about some summer moves. The RFA article I wrote on Tuesday did very well. People were kind of coming up to me in the arena and commenting on it. People, you work in the arena. It surprises me how many people around the Penguins also read my stuff on a daily basis. There's a whole subtext to that, but it's always kind of cool when someone, in the locker room is like, hey, I read that. I like this line, or I like that line. Anywho, Connor asks or says that Crosby chop goal looked like it defied physics. It really did. There was way too much speed on it for the casual chop he gave it. Sid doing Sid things. It really was just, and the puck takes off, explodes off his stick, top shelf. Yeah, that's just one of those you just watch and marvel and realize how lucky you are to see that guy play. Big Joe, hey, Dan, are you going to keep focusing on the Pens, or are you going to dig into the draft and prospects in Wilkes-Barre? I saw you did a poll for that. Yeah, the poll was like 75-25 that I should start covering the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, but a couple of people made a pretty good point, and I did think it through. So here is Pittsburgh Hockey Now's coming coverage plans. I do plan to fully exhaust myself and sneak away to Wilkes-Barre for a day or two over the next couple or a few weeks. They're also in Cleveland at the beginning of April. Maybe you and I, the collective you and me, should go up to Cleveland. And because they're in Cleveland back-to-back nights. That might be kind of a fun PHN road trip. Go up to Cleveland. Have a few Great Lakes brews and catch a game. Maybe do some live chats and that kind of thing. That, as I say that out loud, let's do that. I'm putting that in my notebook. PHN road trip. But regarding the site, I am going to finish out. I'm going to do all 82 games this season. Not just the site, but me personally, all 82. I'm going to win. I'm going to, get the Iron Man and hit all 82. Weather, airlines notwithstanding. I mean, at any one point, good Lord, I fly Delta quite a bit. And they had, another goober pilot scrape the wing on the runway as they came down, had to circle around. And unfortunately, it was another one of those little airlines that they contract to run a small route, which I have to take a few of. I don't know where they're getting these people. Air traffic control had to say, hey, you scraped your wing. The pilot's like, what? Anyway, I'm doing all 82. I'm going to sneak away to Wilkes-Barre. And then I am going to be there for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins playoff run. I apologize, Wilkes-Barre fans. I am bringing the jinx. I'm bringing the curse for the playoff run. Hopefully they draw a bad or an inferior team like Lehigh Valley, and they can smoke them in the first round and really get some momentum and heat going. That is the plan right now. Braden, what's my prediction for Karlsson Letang this off season? All right, 13-25. Okay. I'm going to get into this in a deeper way than you probably expected when you asked that question, Braden. One, I'm starting to wonder if there will be a market for Erik Karlsson. I just am. He was so good in Four Nations. And respect to him, his play has been uninspired. I think that's maybe a nice adjective. Uninspired since then. So there are some general managers around the league, and I know this to be true. I know this for a fact, who believe that other general managers like him. He's not for me, but I'm sure there are some general managers who will take a shot at him. It doesn't exactly point to a guarantee of a trade. Look, especially with the Penguins going to Sweden next year. Would Karlsson look at a mediocre situation? Let's just say, I don't know. What would be a mediocre? Okay, this isn't going to happen. let's just say Philadelphia calls and says, hey, we'll give you a 4th-round pick and eat the entire salary. Or we'll give you a 3rd-round pick and you eat a couple million, whatever. Karlsson looks at Philadelphia, decides, do I really want to play for John Tortorella? Do I really want to go to a team that's rebuilding, even if they have hit rock bottom or are on their way back up? Do I really want to go do that? And he looks at the Penguins schedule and says, maybe next Christmas I'll open my trade window again. I want to go to Sweden, though. So I don't necessarily, I would put higher odds on Karlsson, or I would put better odds on Karlsson remaining with the Penguins than I would him being traded. That's just my gut feeling on March 19th, right? One of those GMs could take a run at him in May, and I change my opinion based on the changing facts. You should do those things. Kris Letang. Let's dive into this, Braden. Here we go. Because I think I'm in a very unique position. If you follow along Pittsburgh hockey now, you follow along a lot of the stuff I write and talk about, you know that Kris and I went back and forth a couple of weeks ago. Had a bit of a misunderstanding. We talked it out and realized that, Kris was very forthcoming. The misunderstanding was not cantankerous in any way emotional. Don't worry. I didn't make him mad, and he wasn't like Kingerski. No, it just, my words, his answer, they matched on paper, but my question and his answer were about 2 different topics, unbeknownst to either of us. But I asked the question that I intended to ask, and, he and I talked about it. So I'm going to share a little bit of that conversation with you now. I do not think Kris Letang understands he controls his fate for another year. Next summer of 2026, he will have a 10-team approved trade list to which the Penguins can trade him. But for the summer of 25, no movement, ironclad, locked down, no chance to move, nothing is going to happen. In talking to him, I did not get the sense that I'm struggling for the words, obviously. I felt like if Kyle Dubas pushed, Kris Letang would accept the trade. Now, Kyle Dubas has said he's not going to push. So the point is moot. All right? You bloggers are going to write what I just said. The point is moot. But I feel like Kris feels like his Penguins future or his Penguins career might not end in Pittsburgh. Or at least he is cognizant of the possibility. That's the way I want to phrase it. He is cognizant of the possibility that it's a business, and beginning in 26, it's not his choice anymore, and he understands the possibilities. Does that make any sense to y'all? That, while Crosby and Malkin have ironclad, I'm staying and you can't do anything about it, sort of contracts and clauses, Letang has that wiggle room. And he is really introspective. Or he's become more introspective this season. And I think he has felt the losing on a deeper level. I think he is struggling with the passage of time a little bit. I think he is not happy with his game. I mean, he's going to have, it's not a career low, but it certainly will be his worst offensive output since 2010. I think all of those things and more have kind of knocked him a little bit off kilter, off game. And so when I asked a question about the future, he was probably too honest about it. I was kind of nudging him. I'm like, just to be clear, Kris, you are saying on the record you're staying. And he kind of didn't understand I was shoving him to the yes answer. He's like, listen, it's a business. And I'm like, no, it's your choice. So that's the Letang situation. Do I expect him with the Penguins next year? Yes. Would I be surprised if he wasn't? No. How about that? That was, sorry, a 6-minute answer on Karlsson Letang, but I wanted to give that all to you. I wanted to unload and kind of, make you or give you as much as I know. That's what these live chats, I don't know, some of you have picked up. I'm a little bit looser with the language than I am when in print, because I can be more nuanced and I can explain things in greater detail to you. Let's go to Derek. Do I think Kyle Dubas has issues constructing a D Corp? Yes, I've written that. I flat out wrote that last week, that Dubas's past mistakes are in fact manifesting themselves. Let me make a note of that here. Are in fact manifesting themselves in the same way here in Pittsburgh. In Toronto, he perpetually had a struggling defensive core every year. And every year he had to overpay at the deadline, or tried to overpay at the deadline, for things like grit in the lineup and defensemen who could be relied upon. He never did really figure out the magic formula and get it right as, very good Toronto team until his final year was bounced like a basketball right out of the playoffs. Yeah, there were some 7 games in there and there were some heartbreaks, but that's what happens. That's what happens to teams that can't defend, that aren't gritty and tough in the playoffs. There just is a difference in the postseason and the regular season. And Dubas's Toronto teams did not have good defense cores. So do I question his ability to assemble a D core? Yeah, I do. You cannot look at the assembled Penguins defensemen. Each of them in their own right have a certain role, a certain niche, and a level of talent. Obviously, Letang and Karlsson are way up there. Maybe Karlsson a little higher than Letang, but they're both, Letang has, quite frankly, Letang should have won the Norris in 2016 had it not been for that neck injury. Cost him the Norris, and he still, I think, finished 4th in the voting. He's finished top 5 multiple times, top 10 numerous times in Norris. I don't need to pump Letang's tires. Karlsson's obviously won it a few times. So my point is, there is talent on the Penguins' blue line. The assembly, however, is like putting Legos and pudding together. Chocolate pudding and you're just trying to, it just doesn't work on any level. This defense, the Penguins' defensive core, is probably the biggest fault of the team, the biggest problem. And it was entirely avoidable. Every single thing. They weren't a good defensive core. They were mediocre with Marcus Pettersson. Just look at the difference. You take Pettersson out of that top 6 and what they've become, you realize just how good or how much responsibility guys like Marcus Pettersson, or before him, Brian Dumoulin, had to shoulder. And without one of those guys, Ryan Graves is struggling again. Yeah. Who would have thought Ryan Shea's absence would have lessened the Penguins' blue line? Kolyachonok, I have doubts if he's an NHL defenseman. P.O. Joseph is inconsistent. P.O. can really play a great game sometimes, but then he can recede, and when he gets soft and kind of a loose gap, he's problematic. Matt Grzelcyk is a smaller puck moving sort of guy, But when you have to pair him with a Kris Letang or an Erik Karlsson, you are asking him to do the heavy, dirty work. He's not physically built for that. His game isn't built for that. So all of those things, I would absolutely say that, yeah, there's some doubt of Kyle Dubas. My thought is on that, and I guess that was Derek, yeah. My thought is on that, Derek, is that Kyle is trying to go to the next level of hockey evolution with how he constructs his decor. Ray Shero tried that. Was it back in 2010? He tried to go with 6 all-round defensemen, kind of 6 skating, puck-moving guys, Paul Martin, Zbinek, I forget, yeah. They traded him back to Arizona a year later, and Kris Letang and Sergei Gonchar, and they realized it was not the right way to construct the blue line, and they had to make changes. After they lost Hal Gill, they kind of had to go back in that direction. I am waiting for Dubas to have that course correction, but he keeps trying to elevate to that, our defensemen are going to outskate you. Our defensemen, as in mass, are going to outplay you. It just doesn't work because every team will push back, and you need to be able to squelch, and take care of your own net. Let's go to Anthony. Seriously, what does Kris Letang bring to this team anymore? His shots constantly get blocked. You can always count on a dumb penalty and many stupid mental mistakes. Well, Anthony, I'm going to just assume here that even my explanation is not going to make a dent in your opinion. So I'm going to move on. Michael, hey, Michael. Can you really see the drop-off in Letang's game you can see the drop-off in Letang's game last night showed? Listen, you guys are making too much of that one play, which was just bad luck. There are other things that I've been talking about all season. Letang's inability to really get separation when he's rushing the puck. His skating metrics, his speeds and everything are still the same. But there is just a little something, a little explosive burst here or there that's missing. And I think when the collective begins to notice something bad, it might only be, level 2 or 3 bad. But the collective, and that means you, by the way, takes it to level 10 because you notice every little mistake and you notice every little thing. Letang has been kind of an average defenseman this year, which is a little bit surprising. And so his mistakes are a little more glaring this year. He's not doing as much to make up for them. That can't be denied. But is he, a bad defenseman? No, I wouldn't say that. And so I'm hesitant to go along with criticisms because I feel like the criticisms are too far or too much, or if I feed into them, they go too far. But yeah, I certainly have to acknowledge that it's undeniable. He's been kind of average this season, and yeah, so every mistake is a little more magnified. Ashton says, I love my Pens, but it's so unwatchable with the leads we blow all the time. According to Matt Vensel, the Post-Gazette, that was the first 2-goal lead they'd blown since early January. Now, in fairness, they haven't had many 2-goal leads since early January. Yeah, that was like repressed memories flooding back last night, wasn't it? Let's go to Jason. Letang was underappreciated in his prime, but he is long past his prime, not his fault. I do think he was very underappreciated, league-wide as well. There was just a segment. Unfortunately, here, let me dive deeper into Letang because he was the victim of online assassination. Letang's prime was that 2010 to 2020 range in which a lot of bloggers dominated internet conversation. And those bloggers are not independent thinkers. It became a mob a long time ago. And to be heard in the mob, you have to go further than the last person who spoke. And so if one person notices a mistake, one blogger noticed a mistake, or one critic or one person on Twitter noticed a mistake, that meant two other people had to go further in their criticism. And so Letang really took a beating from, let's call it 2010 to 2020, 21, whatever have you, in the online sphere. A whole lot of people had emotionally invested in the opinion that he wasn't very good. He was too many turnovers, too many mistakes. Never mind the fact that a lot of, I remember writing in 2016 and again in 2017 when Pittsburgh Hockey Now was brand new. I remember writing that Letang's turnover rate was less than Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns and the other, and even Drew Doughty. He was kind of, on par with Drew Doughty. But that didn't matter. Letang took a lot of beating just because it became a self-perpetuating sort of thing. It's unfortunate for him. It probably did cost him more Norris votes. As, look, writers are human beings. And you see all that criticism. You can't watch 82 games and realize the criticism, a lot of it is just, a cart of manure. And so you knock him down a few pegs, in your voting. Let's go to Chatter. What's keeping Hayes from putting the puck in the net? Looked good mid-season, looks confused now. Let me take a quick drink here, Chatter. I don't know that I would call him confused. His play since the trade deadline has certainly diminished, declined. He has had trouble finishing all season. He's had how many great chances on the power play, even 5-on-5. He has generated offensive chances. His finish this year, I guess his finish the last few years has been a steady decline. And that's all I can tell you. If hockey players knew how to correct that, they would. But it's one of those things that just is ethereal, existential, unknowable, mysterious. It's which coach runs the defense? That would, in fact, be David Quinn. But JR, if you're going to throw blame on David Quinn, I probably wouldn't. You can only, even that chicken salad is going to taste a bit like, what? There's just nothing. There's nothing that can be done there. There's absolutely nothing that can be done. What playoff series did Dubas lose to Dubas? Or what playoff series did Toronto lose under Dubas due to the defense? All right, Jay. Don't go to semantics and split hairs like that. The defense wasn't good enough, period. Teams without a good enough defense don't win. Just because they didn't make the big mistake doesn't mean... Anyway. Aaron Pulaski. Has Jarry's emergence made things more clear or complicated for Dubas next year? I don't think it's really changed the situation. It might... listen, Jarry has to continue playing well. Now that this win streak is over, if I were Mike Sullivan, I would go right back to him on Friday. I'd go right back to Jarry. Put a little confidence in him, but also let's see his mental bounce back. I think that's important. I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, important factor to know what's his mental bounce back going to be like. If Jarry can play well for the rest of the season, I think the Penguins might be breathe a little easier bringing him back next season. If he doesn't play well the rest of the season, let's just say that was a 4-game aberration, then a buyout is entirely possible. So no pressure, Jars. You know, he might be playing for his career, his job. I don't think it's complicated, to be honest. I think the decisions are quite clear, but the decision can't and shouldn't have been made already, because let's see. Let's turn him loose and see how he responds, how he reacts, how he plays. That would be a bit of a mystery to me. How he's going to play and how he's going to react. Wondering, this is about Jarry. I don't think Jarry has any trade value right now. Zero. So, the hopes that the Penguins could somehow move Jarry, it would cost them draft picks. But then let me ask you this. If you move Jarry this summer, next season, are you comfortable? I would not be. Are you comfortable with Alex Nedeljkovic and Joel Blomqvist as your goaltenders? Truthfully, I thought Blomqvist got exposed in his most recent call-up and run. I thought he got exposed. I thought he can be beat to the sides. His glove and blocker sides were alternately picked upon. Pucks off the ice were beating him. And he is going to have to do some heavy-duty work in Wilkes-Barre. Okay, let me get Jarry for Philip Grubauer, 1-for-1. Doesn't Grubauer have a longer contract or a higher salary? I think so. Okay, so let me, you guys can queue up the questions. Let me get back to the Mike Sullivan issue here. Mike Sullivan, 36 minutes. I'm keeping track here so I can write a better, like those nifty podcasts who have people working for them sort of do. They say, okay, at this time I talked about this and that. Anyway, kind of expounding upon what Mark Madden was talking about on Tuesday, that he doesn't think Sullivan is the right coach for the team next year because Sullivan is going to play to win each night, and that precludes younger players from getting more ice time to make mistakes and so on and so forth. I think Mark is in the right church on this one. I will say I have seen more adjustments, more tolerance, more changes from Sullivan this season than I have in the past handful. I mean, look no further than Philip Tomasino. Look no further than Cody Glass. Tommy Novak was, thrown right into the mix. Unfortunately, I think Novak's injury might be a little more serious than the Penguins thought originally. Obviously, he was out day to day, and we're over a week now, and he didn't skate on Monday at practice. So I look at the myriad of younger players who have gotten a chance. Look, Jesse Puljujarvi. God, I hate mentioning that name because here they come. Got significant opportunity this year. I mean, he was in the top 6 for a minute. He was on the third line for most of the time. Cody Glass stuck in the lineup. And I've explained ad nauseum, I'm not getting into it, why Glass was in the lineup. His advanced analytics and the scoring chances when he was on the ice exploded. He was a rainmaker. The water didn't hit the ground. That was as inexplicable to me as anything. But I do believe that Sullivan has the ability to adapt to his situation. So I don't think he'll be fired. I don't think he'll be shoved out the door. I do think he will probably have a good talk with himself if he wants to go through this. If he wants to watch Rutger McGroarty, Tommy Novak, Philip Tomasino, if he wants to kind of stick these guys in the lineup next season and leave them there and keep working with them and working with them, some coaches really enjoy that. Some coaches have a short tolerance for that. They want to go play. They want to win. I don't know where Sullivan is going to fall on that. I suspect Sullivan at this point is a company man who's going to adhere to the wishes of the general manager. There's another aspect to Mike Sullivan that probably has to change for next year too. And that is he needs to simplify everything. The Penguins are an unfortunate dichotomy in this transition. The top handful, half dozen players can play Mike Sullivan's system and game plan to its fullest. They understand when he starts giving them a lot of details and really getting into the intricate planning of the game. They can follow that. I think these other guys who are fighting to hang on, fighting to get into the NHL, who need to just keep it bare bones simple, I think they struggle with that. And so Sullivan kind of has to almost have two game plans. Okay, you top guys, watch for this and that and come off the wall here, pop out there. You'll see this play here. And the other guys, he's coaching on more fundamental aspects of the game, how to stay on the right side of the puck, how to maintain your F3 responsibility, which completely collapsed on all lines on Tuesday night. He's coaching those more fundamentals. And can he do it? Yeah, I think he can. He's a smart hockey coach, and he's a smart motivator. If the Penguins got a dumb coach for next year, probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, however. If they went and got a dumb coach who was, happy-go-lucky, kept everything simple for everybody, Sidney Crosby might want to wrap a stick around his head by midseason, but the other dozen guys probably would benefit. I don't know. It's a complicated and a little bit of a convoluted situation there on Sullivan. Of course, he could prove me entirely, prove part of this wrong and part of it right by more becoming that coach for next season. You might see him become that coach in the final 12 games this season. Now that the Penguins have hit 0 on the thing. I had all kinds of pictures I was going to show you too. I went 42 minutes, 43 minutes talking, just me, just my face on there. That's kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, Ryan Graves is a problem. This play, that goal was horrendous. The defensive nonsense on that play. There were 3 Penguins around the net, and somehow a crashing defenseman finds the loose puck. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Crosby87 asks, do I think they will try to re-sign Matt Grzelcyk? I think there is some tepid interest. In fact, I can confirm, I did report that there was some level of interest. It might be one of those things where they both go to July 1st. They tell Matt, hey, check out the market. If you can get more money than the $3 million we're going to offer you, take it. If our $3 million is the best, come on back. That might be kind of what they do. I don't know, but I know there was some tire kicking from both sides going on. Alex asks, when should we expect to see the young guys from the baby Penguins come up to the big leagues? Well, they've got only a couple of call-ups left, Alex. They can only call up 2 more. They want to keep them together, either at the NHL level or the AHL level. That's why you saw Unacceptably called up last night. They didn't want to call up just one. And Koppinen acquitted himself quite well. He has some NHL experience. He got his first NHL goal. Unless some injuries befall the Penguins, I'm going to say next season, there is a spark. There is a certain something with that Wilkes-Barre Scranton team. And the Penguins just don't want to break that up. So they want to keep them together at either level. So in this case, I guess it's more likely they're going to keep them together at Wilkes-Barre for the next few weeks and let them go on a hope they go on a playoff run. Andrew says, with the Caps as good as they are, the Canes always competitive. The New York Rangers likely to bounce back next year. New Jersey with a healthy Jack Hughes. And the Columbus Blue Jackets coming out of their rebuild. Are the Pens the worst in the Metro? Well, you did forget the Flyers. And the Islanders are kind of held together with bubble gum and paper clips right now. The Islanders are... I think Lou Lamoriello is doing a terrible job as the GM there. Absolutely terrible. They're holding on to older players who aren't great. They're holding on to older players who are just loyal. And that's going to cost them big time next year. It's going to cost them huge next year. So will the Pens be the worst in the Metro next year? Quite possibly. But they'll have some competition for that. Yeah, no question. Robert, reports I've been seeing is the Pens are going to go hard after Marner this offseason. No, Robert, you haven't seen any of those reports. They don't exist. You've seen some bloggers opine. You've seen me connect dots under these certain circumstances. I promise you, you have seen no reports that the Penguins will go after Mitch Marner. Just you're like the third person that's used that phrasing. I've seen reports. Like hockey buzz and that nonsense, like the blogosphere doesn't count. Okay? Stick Sportsnet, TSN, and local beat reporters probably keep, The Athletic as well. Keep it to that, and you'll be fine. But there have been no reports, merely conjecture, speculation, opinion. That's it. Let's see here. Yeah, Grubauer does make more than Jarry. I don't know why you would dive into that. Both are bad. Trade them for each other and see what happens. Yeah, but the Penguins would lose, what, $600,000 in cap space for an older goalie. At that point, if they're both bad and a buyout becomes something you have to consider, then you want Jarry. Sports fan agreed on Sullivan. Everyone talks 16 team. Those guys had already come through years of development and were ready to pop. They were, yeah. They'd already spent a couple of years in Wilkes-Barre. Think of the number of times Brian Rust went up and down before he stuck. It's been a scarce resource, but who's the last player we drafted and developed? I know the answer to this. You want to know the last time the Penguins drafted a guy who stuck around in the lineup for several years? 2015, Dominic Simone. Yeah, no kidding. I kid you not. Let's go back to Sports Fan. It's harsh, but sometimes teams need a placeholder coach solely to develop the new core before they get that one that puts them over the top. Therrien to Bilesma is a great example. Well, Therrien was far more than a placeholder coach. I think you're downgrading Michael Therrien almost to the point of being offensive on that one. Therrien was a solid NHL coach. He was the discipline that those young guys needed to come out of the Edzo era. Let's see here. Do I think Sully outlasts Letang? Ooh, that's an awesome question. No, I do not. I think, well, then again, that's 3 more years. If I had to bet, and I this is obviously off the cuff, right? I'm going to say Letang. Well, no, that 10-team no-trade list is... I'm going to waffle back. I'm going to go Mike Sullivan, outlast Letang. Yes. Final answer, Sullivan. Okay, Michael says we have 2 really good lines right now, Crosby line and the Achari line. If we could get Gino better wingers, we'd have 3 really strong lines. Listen, folks, that Connor Dewar, Blake Lizotte, Noel Acciari line. That is a fourth line. That is a good fourth line every day for every team. Understand that those are single-digit goal scorers. They are not going to score at the pace that they were scoring for the last several games. Not possible. There just isn't the talent level to do that. They can muck and they can grind and they can create momentum and occasionally get rewarded with a goal. You are 100% correct. One of the two big problems I wanted to talk about with the Penguins, and you just kind of hit the nail on the head there, Michael, is right now the Penguins lineup is asking far too much of several players. You're asking Danton Heinen and Philip Tomasino to be water-carrying scorers. That's not going to that is not a recipe for success for any team. That is rebuilding 101 kind of lineup. And Malkin being 38, he is not able to do the things he used to do. And he can have those flashes, he can have those little, period here, a game there, but he needs help and respect to Tomasino, who is working hard to make himself an NHL regular, reliable sort of player. But asking him to lift Evgeny Malkin is that's an obligation and responsibility that shouldn't fall on him, but the Penguins don't have any other options at this point. So Robert double dipped on his questions there. I hope Jarry plays well, says Brian, so he can be traded. Let's go to Steven. Following a question above is the Dewar, Lizotte, Acciari line, the new Czar, Bluger, Tanev shutdown line that can play against opponents' top lines and free up the Crosby line. That's exactly how they should be used. Realize that Connor Dewar had no goals in his first 31 games this season. He got 3-2 with the Penguins. Those were his first 3 games, first 3 goals this season. Stephen also asked, does Imama have a future on the team? Absolutely. I would more say he has a future with the organization more than a future with the team. Contrary to the breast pounding, Sullivan hates tough players. Sullivan likes tough players. That's why Imama is in the lineup. He's going to play 5 minutes a night, 4, 5, 6 minutes a night. That's just that type of player. It's what they're going to play. It's what Ryan Reeves and every single one of those guys before him played. Not with the Penguins, with every team. So, yeah, I think the Penguins like having a guy like Imama around. They can dress against the Capitals and they can dress against the Flyers or whomever might bring, a knuckle dragon thug into town. They can put Imama in the lineup. I think Mike Sullivan likes that. I'm sure Sidney Crosby likes that. It keeps the games significantly cleaner. Of course, the Penguins defense playing really soft and the forwards crew not doing much better. And Penguins play soft. Well, other teams don't feel the need to rough them up as much either. So that's another solution to it. I am going to wrap this up in about 10 minutes because I want to go get my motorcycle. I've missed her. Gabriella says, Dan, do you think part of the problem with Sully is that he was in win now mode for a decade and making the switch is hard? He would be saying goodbye to winning with a core he won everything with. Let me make sure I understand. I don't think he will have a tough time switching gears. I don't think he'll have a tough time switching gears. I think he'll take a moment. He'll realize what he's got. He's always done that. He's always realized what he had and tried to adjust. This year's offensive scheme and system, in which they really paid special emphasis on playing down low to high, and really kind of just forgot about the rush because they couldn't do it. All those things are part of Sullivan's evolutions and changes and so on and so forth. Would he ride it out to the end with the core and they all go together? That's an interesting painting, isn't it? That's an interesting kind of pretty picture to hang over the fireplace. If Crosby, Letang, Malkin, and Sullivan all just stepped aside at the same time, I suppose that's the way the movie would go. Crosby, 87. Connor Timmins has looked solid since coming over. What are your thoughts on his game, and do you think he's reached his potential as a top 6 D-man, or is there room for him to grow? I don't know if there's room for him to grow. I have seen the warts, and I've seen the positives. Take it for what it's worth. The positive and negative, what I'm about to say, I view him as a right-handed P.O. Joseph. I think he can elevate his game. I think he can skate well. I think he can move the puck and play in the offensive zone. I think he's not physical in the defensive zone. I think he can be a little too soft down there at times. And yeah, so it's hard to quantify his bona fides on that blue line, though, because the Penguins' blue line is so problematic that it's hard to judge a player amidst that slop and chaos. Like if he were on a good blue line and you're watching him play, his mistakes would be dramatically mitigated. And you'd think he's a better defenseman. A player like that, when they're on a bad blue line, their mistakes are exacerbated and magnified. So I suppose that's just the reality. And take from that answer what you will. Was Dan glass half full? Was Dan's glass half empty? I say it's a glass not enough to drink. Alex Peterson, who are some guys you expect Dubas to go after in free agency? Alex, I don't think we're there yet. I think we have to get past the regular season before I really start looking at free agents, who's going to re-sign where. I did. I can tell. It always makes me mad when people don't go to Pittsburgh Hockey Now every day. Go there every day. Every day. Where is it? Here you go. I'm going to share the screen momentarily. Share screen. I think you might find this interesting, however, though. I did take a look at 5 RFAs for you to keep an eye on over the next 6 weeks, because teams will be locking these guys up. Once it gets to May and these guys aren't signed, then all bets are off. Because then a team is either waiting to see what other teams will offer, or they're taking that player for granted. What you get into May, that's, I think, when the official RFA watch will begin. That was just a first draft, although I had some pretty good names on it. I really do think you'll see 1 or 2 of those names get flipped with an offer sheet. I think the Penguins could be one of those teams. But in terms of unrestricted free agents, Alex, what the Penguins do over the next 2 months between now and, I take that back, 3 months, now and mid-June, is going to determine their July 1st strategy. I think it's to be determined. If Dubas feels like he can hit bottom quickly and bounce, like if he feels like if he can get some young players, more young players, into the fold before the draft, or if if he's going to have a couple of top 5 picks somehow, or a couple of higher first round draft picks, and he feels like the summer of 2025 is a launch pad rather than one more year of transition. Okay, so if it's one more year of transition, you're going to see more plugs. You're going to see more Matt Grzelcyks and, trying to find a Blake Lizotte and who else did they sign that, more Cody Glasses and so on and so forth. If he feels like the summer can be a launch pad, then we start talking about the Mitch Marners and the high tickets, or at least some plausible, more good players to add. It will be very difficult to make 25 a launch pad. He's going to have to be really creative. He's going to have to swipe a couple of young players, be really creative and somehow make Buffalo understand that they need to bring in some veteran help or at least pry one or two of those young players out of Buffalo and maybe Anaheim as well. Then we start talking. That's going to be difficult. It's not going to be as easy as you think to trade away these draft picks for young players. Not going to be easy because Dubas is not playing with premium draft picks. He's playing with second and third rounders and a lot of third rounders. A third rounder generally buys you a veteran, 31, 32 years old, 33, with a couple or few more years left. That's what a third rounder buys you. An above average 32-year-old veteran. And that's all. You're not going to get a 23-year-old with the world ahead of him. Matthew. It wasn't a mistake by Letang. Good grief, Dan. He reached with his skate and got caught flat-footed. It was a mistake, period, end of story. Well, geez, Matthew, I would explain the facts to you, but you already said end of story. Darn. Don't you hate when people just end the argument and win because they said end of argument? Matthew, puck coming this direction, hits something unexpected, goes that direction. Gable Fisk always comes late, but always brings some good stuff here. Greetings from my favorite city. Is that it must be Vegas. Yeah, I do love Vegas. Do I think it's reasonable to expect that Letang will finish his contract with the Penguins while actually playing most of the games? Reasonable to expect, yes. Guaranteed, no. Brandon, thoughts on a theory that Dubas won't move on from Raquel Karlsson this offseason due to international games? Yeah, I talked about that a little while ago. If Dubas allowed those 2 regular season games to dictate his player personnel strategy and moves, that would be malfeasance. I do think Karlsson might stick around for those games. And I think perhaps if it's a borderline trade, you know what I mean? If it's like, it could go either way. Dubas also does understand the significance of playing in Sweden with those 2 players. So if it wasn't if it was a marginal trade that could go either way, maybe he declines because of that. But if he's not trading either of those guys, or if he gets the offers that he wants and says, I can't do it, guys, we got the Sweden games, that would be absolutely malfeasance. Oh, Matthew's still commenting. Matthew, just go away then. I can't fix stupid. Ken, where is Joel Blomqvist at the moment? I don't see him in Wilkes-Barre, only Larson and Murashov. I also checked Wheeling's last 3 games. Don't see him there either. I don't recall him being injured when he left the Berg. Is there currently an odd man out in Wilkes-Barre? Yes, it would in fact be Joel Blomqvist right now. What did Murashov win? Like 8 in a row? 9 in a row? I think, I don't know. I've asked my folks in Wilkes-Barre and kind of gotten, he's here, don't worry, sort of responses. Look, he got shelled in Pittsburgh. It probably behooved everybody involved to, in fact, to give him a moment. Give him a moment on the practice sheet to work on a couple of those things. It behooved them to give him a moment to take a breath and decompress and get his mental game right. He got shelled. He got his big chance, and he absolutely got shelled. So, I wouldn't read too much into it. MTD Vipers, love your work, Dan. I appreciate you. All right, last one. We're over an hour, and I've got to go get my motorcycle. Dubas isn't developing individuals at Wilkes-Barre. He is developing an entire shadow team to replace this one next year. His intention is a plug-and-play team. Any thoughts? He said so. He didn't quite put it in those grandiose shadow team terms, but you're right, Sonny. He wants to keep as many of those guys together as possible. When he brings, let's just say next year, you're going to have Rutger McGroarty, Owen Pickering, maybe I don't get the feeling that they don't usually mention Tristan Brose in that same breath, but I like Tristan Brose a great deal. I think he's going to force his way into it. And who am I missing? Maybe Harrison Brunick, although he's not part of that shadow team. He'll be one of those younger players, right? And then you kind of add in Philip Tomasino to that mix. All of a sudden, you're going to have a very young and vibrant locker room. Oh, Ville Koivunen is a guy I'm forgetting. So, yeah, you bring in those 5 guys. You add a couple more. You're going to have a young and vibrant locker room that kind of is unto itself. And you're going to have, the big 3, the veterans kind of shepherding them along. And, yeah, they're going to be a little bit crazy. I think you and I might enjoy watching them play, just wild, young, and dumb. Much like the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens are in year 2 of wild, young, and dumb, and they just might make the damn playoffs. Of course, the Canadiens also have several top 5 picks in their lineup, Slavkovsky and so forth, and Reinbacher. So, yes, now the Penguins need some of those top 5 picks to add the top-end talent. They'll probably pick 6th, maybe 7th, outside chance at 5th. In this draft. 6. Top 6 is where you need to be. That's where we're going to end it. Because there's a kid, Anton Frondel is the name I was looking at, who's kind of ranked 6th in the draft rankings. I feel like he could be an NHL contributor right away. The rest after like 7, 8, 9, 10 would be a little bit of a project, a bit more raw material where you'll see them in a couple or a few years. So that is it, kids. Enjoy some. Wasn't it supposed to be sunny and 70 today? What the heck happened? I'll step outside and we'll have some fun. All right, folks, enjoy. We will do this again next week. Like, subscribe, yell at me, have some fun.